Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. My name is Randall Richmond, and I'm the Director of Athletics here at Kent State University and a proud graduate of the NCAA Charles Wickham Leadership Institute. The Leadership Institute helped me refine who I was as a man well before focusing on who I was as an administrator. Within the program, I developed lifelong friendships, colleagues, and confidants who helped me discover my true purpose in this profession, which is to be a transformational leader that has a positive impact on people's lives well beyond sports. And as the great orator Big Sean often says, the energy you give is what you manifest. Peace.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today is Coach Tony Hull. Coach Hull is the outside receivers coach at Louisiana Monroe. Greetings, Coach. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, appreciate you having me.
Now, Coach, what I have here is your outside receivers coach at Louisiana Monroe. You spent some time at Kansas and Hawaii, and you also coached high school football for a little over a decade. And really, coming out of college, you started your career in engineering, specifically at NASA, which is significant, right? Kind of different kind of coaching background, but I think you were coaching high school ball and overlapped while you were doing that or something, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was volunteering at a couple of high schools.
Couple of high schools, right. So I want to start off with NASA, man. I guess it was 4 or 5 years you spent there. Talk to us a little bit about that experience, right? That's a significant role, a significant credibility point on your resume, and then you give it up because coaching had called your name. Talk to us about NASA and that job and your experience there.
It was probably one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. NASA was going through a transition. They had just implemented a new welding technique, specifically known as friction stir welding, and production had been down for a while because being an industrial engineer, you're labeled as, some people call it a bean counter. So you're labeled as someone that's only focused on numbers, not really able to affect the culture change. And the welding department struggled before I got there with meeting their production goals. And I was blessed because when I got there, me and the team that we worked together, and we increased production tremendously by just affecting the culture and have a cultural shift. And that alone increased productivity.
I've been alive for 2 shuttle explosions, right? There was one when I was in second grade, and then there was one probably around the time when you were at NASA. Was that before or after? Where in the timeline was that?
It was actually before I got there. One of the reasons I was there was because NASA had identified the issue with the disaster. A piece of the foam on that external fuel tank fell off and hit the underbelly of the shuttle. Now, going out, it was fine, but coming back in, gases and stuff built up into that damaged part of the shuttle. And it caused the shuttle to, it caused a disaster. So that friction stir weld method I talked about assisted with the shuttle going back into space because it allowed the tank to be more flexible, and that allowed the foam to fall off in smaller pieces and not affect the shuttle.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So they brought you in and probably other people they brought in around the time to fix a problem they found, which was a disaster that we all saw on national television. You said you went into welding. Now, welding, we were talking offline, right? Welding had its own culture, right? They were older guys who've been doing it for 1,000 years. Did they accept you when you come in as what they called you a bean counter, right? Did they accept you right off the bat? Or tell me about the going in there, because you said the outcome was an increase in productivity. So that had to be a significant transition.
To be perfectly honest, they did not accept any other quote unquote bean counters coming in because they figured all you can do is work with numbers. You don't know anything about processes and procedures. So the first thing I had to do to establish credibility and to help assist change the culture was to let them know that I understood processes and procedures. I wasn't just a guy that related to numbers. The second thing I wanted them to know is, okay, what are your overall goals individually? Some guys it was to retire. Some guys it was to move up within the company. Some guys was to get better pay. I had to show them how, if this department reached its goals. That in turn would allow you to reach your goals. So the longer the department fell behind, the longer your goals would fall behind. So just showing those guys how your individual accomplishments is attached to this team overall goal and getting them to buy in and believe into that system.
That's excellent. So you pretty much introduced accountability to the team, right? And then told them
Yeah.
how accountability on a team also helps you in terms of your individual accountability and what you want to accomplish as an individual, right? I think that's an excellent way of introducing a team culture into something that they may or may not have worked as a team. I think that's an excellent experience, which brings you into coaching, right? Just exactly what you got to do in coaching. Thinking about you coaching in high school, right, for a little over a decade, high school football, it's the purest form because at its purest form, you just coach whoever shows up. Now, we all know there's recruiting and things happen in terms of guys transferring, but at its purest form, you coach whoever shows up and try your best to win on it. I want to talk about that transition from high school to college because I think it was around the time that you transitioned. There was NCAA legislation that said if a college hired a high school coach, he had to be hired directly into one of the, at the time, 9 full-time assistants, right? Now they're 10, of course.
Correct.
And so that meant you had to come in and be credible right off the bat. So talk about that transition from coaching high school ball to coaching college full-time position and really how the high school coaching background kind of influences how you coach today.
Thing that could have happened for my career as a coach was to coach and teach at the high school level. Here's why. It allows you to learn and understand how to meet players at their level. A lot of times and collegiately, we like to have this straightforward, you either get with the program or you're done, and there's lack of development. Well, coaching in the high school ranks, you have to develop because that's the only way you can build a program is to develop the people that you have. You can't go out and get someone else and just replace them. You have to develop. The teaching background also helped me because it helped me learn about different learning styles and different learning abilities. And I taught college algebra and pre-calculus for a couple years. So that's the subject that kids hate. So I had to find a way to understand where they're at, learn how to meet them where they're at, and to motivate them to get to a level that they're capable of being. And all of those tools I took from coaching and teaching at the high school level, I brought to the college level, and it's helped me develop and transition kids pretty well.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say that. Like I've worked, of course, at the AFCA for almost 15 years and working with high school coaches in Texas where they are definitely on staff. Like you mentioned, what you were doing, being on staff there, like there's a healthy aspect of understanding no matter where you coach or what level you coach at, that coaching is pretty much teaching. And you can't coach everybody the same. People learn different. So I think that was an excellent experience for you. And then, of course, you made that transition. You're at a time where you had to get hired in straight to the field, right, as one of the 9 assistant coaches. Talk a little bit about that transition, right? You come in, these are all guys that are experienced at what they're doing, and they're looking at you like, all right, man, don't bring down the average in terms of what we're doing as far as coaches. Talk to us about that transition coming in, right? It wasn't long after that legislation passed.
The transition was, best way to put it, was beautiful.
Okay.
It was, and here's why I say it was beautiful. You're walking into a staff room with a bunch of 8 other college coaches. All of these guys have been coaching at the college level for quite some time. And you get the opportunity to prove to them and to prove to the head coach that, hey, you actually understand the game of football. You know how to develop a room. You know how to teach kids and reach them where they're at. You know how to motivate kids. You know how to hold them accountable. So you wait for that one moment to say, hey, here's my chance to show it. And I did. And it was beautiful. And guys understood it. They respected it, and they loved me for it, for the fact that I came in ready to go. Now, there's some things I had to learn, but it had nothing to do with football, and it had nothing to do with fundamentals, and it had nothing to do with motivating kids. It was the foundation that's needed, I think, in this profession to have success as a college football coach, I displayed, and those guys were happy.
You mentioned some things you had to learn that had nothing to do with coaching the guys. What were some of those things that you had to learn?
Just some of the oddball NCAA rules, the ability to navigate donors and influential people in the program, the ability to identify them, the ability to, for instance, like your dealer for your dealer card, developing that relationship and just making him feel part of the program because he's, donating this vehicle to the football program. So just knowing that that's a relationship that you would have to develop and nurture and take care of. If you see, fans or donors out in public, you have the ability to identify the major donors that support the program and just go in and say hello and talk to them and just let them know how the program is going. The ability to keep stuff in house, donors like to pick your brain and what's going on with this and what's happening. And I heard this, but ability to know how to decipher and have some discretion about what's going on within the program and keeping stuff within house. Just little things like that kind of off the field that didn't have to do with the fundamentals of football.
Yeah, for the lack of a better term, the political skill necessary to be able to navigate, right?
Yes.
On the college campus and deal with all the various external aspects that you have to deal with when you're in college. I think that's very important. The transition from high school to college, now you're on the road recruiting most of the year, right? So tell me about that aspect of recruiting and how that transition to recruiting, right? That's one of the things coaches either love or a reason why they get out of college coaching is the recruiting thing. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that aspect of it.
So that aspect was beautiful also, and here's why. When I was the head coach at Warren Easton High School, I'm a huge note taker. I observe, I note take. That's just part of my background and part of who I am. The beauty about being at Warren Easton High School is that majority of the top recruiters, head coaches, walk through the doors of Warren Easton. So I was able to talk to those guys. I was able to take notes. I was able to learn from them, but I was also able to observe guys that recruited our school and how they come into school, what's some of the things that they do. And I would take notes, some of the stuff that I liked and some of the stuff that I did not like. And I applied all those lessons learned for when I got on the road recruiting. And to be able to understand a coach's personality and recognize the things that he likes and what he doesn't like. And the things that he likes, I'm going to display them while in his school. Things that, just to give you an example, some guys are real formal. They want you to call them. They want you to set up an appointment before you come through the school. So if I know a coach is that type of style, that's what I'm going to do. Some coaches, particularly in the New Orleans area, they find that quite offensive. They make it like you're a lawyer coming to interrogate them. They don't like that, right? So when I walk into these schools, I'm going to walk in, I'm going to knock on the door, I'm not going to set an appointment, I'm not going to go with any pens, any papers, I'm not going to take any physical notes in front of his face because I don't want him to feel like he's being interrogated. This is just a business trip. I want him to feel like, I want this to feel like a friendly relationship. So just little ins and outs, stuff like that I learned and I took and made the road recruiting beautiful.
Understanding people. I mean, that's also political skill too, right? When we played ball, we had a number of distractions in our own right? Late 90s, early 2000s. But now the distractions have reached a level where it's almost untenable on how players can concentrate on being a student athlete, right? Athlete and student. So I wonder about keeping the guys in your room, right, with the receivers, but even just in general, guys may come to you and see some value in you being on staff. Like, how do you keep guys focused on the things that are important when there are so many distractions pulling at their attention?
The first thing and the most important thing is that you have to know your players. You have to know your kids. You have to know what makes them tick. You have to know their likes, their dislikes. You have to know what's going on with their family. You have to know what's going on with their friends. And once you can identify who they are and those individual things, now you can take the information that you know about them and translate that and transfer that over into what you just talked about. One of the things is keeping them focused. If a kid comes from a background where Mom is just the only one and everybody's relying on them. You have to constantly remind them that, hey, your family's counting on you. You have to, on a daily basis, get them to understand that, hey, this is the real reason why you're here. Some guys are there because they want to get to medical school, right? So you have to, hey, man, the NCAA say you have to have this 2.5, and to get to medical school, we need this 3.5. So you have to hold them to a higher standard. And the key to it all, when you're teaching, and go back to teaching, right? I heard this where if you're teaching kids the lesson, it's a lower level learning environment. When you get to a point where kids are teaching kids, now you have a higher level of thinking going on in that classroom environment, right? So I take that and I translate it over to football. When I'm the only one holding them accountable, I have a lower level environment. But when I get to a point where me and the rest of the room, now we have a special environment. And that's when I think that your room is really, really at a great level.
Again, back to accountability, right? I have a definition of accountability, right? Because when I was at the AFCA, I was given a lecture or something and I wanted to include accountability. And I looked in the dictionary and I was like, this doesn't even fit football or teams or nothing. So what I came up with was this, when it sounds like it's exactly what you're doing. The responsibility of the individual for the actions of the whole and the responsibility of the whole for the actions of the individual, right?
I like that.
And so when you can teach the guys to stand up and teach the guys, now I'm accountable for teaching you what we need to do to be successful. And you guys are accountable for learning and actually doing the things that we're being taught to do so we can all be successful. I think that's an excellent way to do it. And it sounds like the same thing you did when you were in that welding room back at NASA, right? Which is excellent.
Correct. When you have a group of people focused on attaining and achieving success, and they're holding each other, in your words, accountable, that's where the magic happens at, man. So many guys in our profession get so caught up in, I'm going to hold them, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I don't think you can reach your full potential. It's we're going to learn, we're going to hold each other accountable, we're going to. And I think that's where the true beauty happens.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Leadership as a coach, right? As an assistant, as a player in life, it's very important, and it's not necessarily taught with intent as a kid growing up, going to school, unless you play a sport or do some type of co-curricular activity, right? I don't know where it's taught. Now, you can get a little bit of it in college if you're not an athlete. There are leadership classes and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily taught with intent, I think, in our country. If you're not getting it at home, or you may get some of it at home, but then there is an aspect of understanding it away from home. So as a coach, you definitely have to understand about leading people. I wonder about, and I think you've talked about this the whole time, but your approach to leadership in the position room, your approach to leadership being an assistant coach and on staff, and your approach to leadership in terms of helping the offensive coordinator, special teams, defensive coordinator, and the head coach to be the best leaders they can be, right? Being a leader through being a follower. Just tell me about your approach to leadership in various aspects of what you're doing now.
I think you have to have two traits in order to be a great leader. One, you have to love. Love is unconditional. And two, I think you have to serve. Now, sometimes when you serve, you have to serve love, you have to serve compassion, but sometimes you have to serve discipline. You have to serve accountability, right? I think if you can teach kids how to love and serve one another, if you can teach coaches how to love and serve one another, if the head man can learn how to love and serve the guys underneath him, I think that's the quality of great leaders. If you go back and you just research all of the great leaders, I'm pretty sure they're going to have more qualities than what I talked about. But the two main ones I focus on, and I believe that they have, is the ability to love the people that they're leading and ability to serve them.
How do you help, let's say, the head coach? How do you help him to do that better?
I think you have to exhibit it first. I think that energy is real. I think if you can exhibit those two characteristics, I think it rubs off on the next man and the next individual. Where and when Tony Hall walks in the room, man, that's a guy that does whatever for me. He's going to do whatever I need. He's here to serve me. I think when you exhibit those things, people tend to reciprocate it back to you. So one of the best things that can happen to me for being an assistant coach is being a head coach, because I know what I knew what I was looking for in my assistants and what I needed to help me be a better head coach. So now that I'm an assistant, I'm trying to provide those qualities and those things that the head coach that I needed when I was a head coach to my current head coach.
Thinking about the future, right? If you're in the profession, if you're a assistant athletic director, you're a senior associate, you're a deputy, if you're an assistant coach, you're an OC, DC, you have, you want to be a head coach, right? You want to run your own program. Like, who knows when that'll be. But I wonder about what you are setting up now based on your experience as a head coach in high school, based on working for different guys in college, and how you lead now. Have you already started thinking about the expectations you would put forth at some point in the future when you run your own program? Like, do you already have some things like, well, here's what I expect from my staff, here's what I expect from the players, here's what I expect from auxiliary staff, here's what I expect from the university, and then here's what they can expect from me? Have you thought about those types of things in terms of a head coaching role?
I have, and you're right. Everyone's overall. I'm not gonna say everyone because I can't speak for everyone, but my particular overall goal in life is to be a head coach at the Power 5 level, at the highest level possible, right? So the things that I think are important are some of the things that we just talked about. The ability to create an environment that serves one another, that loves one another, and can put the players first. The ability to create an environment for excellence to happen, right? I think that's the overall job as the head coach, to be the ability to create an environment that empowers the assistants, that empowers the kids to be the best of them. Because the byproduct of all of that, the byproduct of creating an environment of excellence is winning. I think that when head coaches solely focus on winning, they skip a couple steps along the way. And so to keep me in check, to keep me focused and not skip steps along the way, I have to daily create an environment that's going to, one, empower them to be the best that they can be, but two, that will allow us to be competitive on a daily basis and in turn win football games on Saturday.
Yeah, so basically create and maintain the environment for success to happen. And that even goes with the school. Tell me if I'm hearing this right. You're saying guys focus on winning without focus on creating the environment for winning to happen.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Because there's some coaches out there who have programs where they do win, but the environment is just so toxic. They'll go 2-3 years of winning, and then all of a sudden that thing just crashed, and you're sitting here thinking like, man, what just happened, right? Because coaches hate being there, kids hate being there, and the reason why everyone is so worried about this transfer portal is because you had a lot of environments that were just toxic, where kids did not like being there, but it was a dictatorship type of style. So now the kids have a little bit of power now. You know what? I'm not going to let you treat me like this. I'm not going to let you talk to me like this. The knock on wood, the years of me being coaching, I never had a transfer portal problem, because kids felt loved, kids felt empowered, and kids felt like they were a part of something that was bigger than them, and they were going to be a better person by being a part of it.
Yeah, which is excellent. I'll ask this last question, then we'll wrap. When I was at the AFCA and I was around coaches all the time, you'd be around a veteran coach, old coach, and the younger guys would come up and say, I think I want to coach. And the first thing the older coach would ask is, two things. A, are you sure you want to do that? And then B, can you live without the game of football? And so you think about your transition from NASA, because I don't know for sure, but I would think that working for NASA as an engineer was probably paying a lot more than working as a high school coach and teacher. But I imagine that question came to your head and it's like, can I live without the game of football? And you had to make a decision at that point. Talk to me about that point, like giving up that engineering job, to the world of what you study for, to go in and be a football coach.
Well, if we're going to be honest, right?
Yeah, honesty is
When I
what we
left
need.
engineering and I took when I was going to take the job, my wife at the time did not approve of it.
Oh, really? Wow.
She did not approve of it.
Yeah.
And my wife then became my ex-wife for some other reasons, but the core of it was, the game. It's the game of football. But again, the game of football is a byproduct of what actually comes of this thing. What actually comes of this thing is developing young boys into men by using the game of football. That's my core fundamental thing that drives me every single day. Yes, the competitive part, winning on Saturday, without any doubt, like that's the way I feed my family. But again, that's a byproduct of developing young men. You cannot develop a football player without developing a young man. You have to develop the young man, and the more he develops as a man, the more he's going to develop as a football player, right? Because responsibility becomes important. Accountability becomes important. Those things that takes what it takes to be a great man also takes to be a great football player. So I can't live without A, the game of football, but B, the byproduct of the game of football, which is developing young men.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's excellent. And I guess you've proven giving up NASA looks like the family environment at the time wasn't supportive of being a coach. And as you know, you got to have a supportive family environment because you're away from the house so much. Well, Coach Hall, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you. And I love what you're doing, and I can't wait to see what else comes from you.
Yes, sir. That was Coach Tony Hull. He's the outside receivers coach at Louisiana Monroe. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.